Jean, I have saved the hardest question for you. Many commentators over the past couple of days have highlighted the concerns of employment in Africa. And Lulama's presentation identified just the massive numbers of new jobs that are needed and something in the order of 100 million plus job gap. As you've listened to the presentations this morning, as you've listened to the other members of this panel, what measures do you see, what opportunities do you see for policy, for investment strategies that can maximize the absorption of labor into a growing African economy or African economies in a way that still facilitates structural transformation for a sustainable long-term growth pattern? Thank you.
Thank you, Duncan. Thanks for the invitation, also to you, Usman, and thanks for the very challenging question. Don't expect that I will exhaust the topic in 5 minutes. I will just try to build on some of the points that I have noted from others and frame what I would like to say in light of what others have already mentioned. Yes, start with the fact that we are all talking about ag transformation with some common patterns across countries and including increasing productivity across sectors, declining share of agriculture in GDP, and labor exiting the ag sector. So perhaps point one related to what David said on employment and Flora on the land market. I see this issue of land and employment very much linked, and so we know that for the time being, employment expansion in Africa has mostly occurred in the informal sector, usually with very low productivity rate. So one point is creating jobs is probably not enough. It's about creating quality jobs and avoid generating a working class of poor. In light of that, I think we have to link this point to the fact that we need to accept that pursuing income growth is also about accepting the shift of labor from ag sector to other sectors. And saying that is not enough. What are the policies that need to be in place to accompany that move out of agriculture? This requires very strong policies that are not yet fully in place. And on that, I think the issue of a vibrant land market is essential, and to make sure that we also see this structural change in farm size and so on. Point two is, and I think Yemi and both Yemi and Moses' report referred to that, is, well, we talked a lot about economic growth in Africa. It's true. Nobody's disputing that, but still productivity, especially in agriculture, is lagging behind. Is very limited, and we know that only growth in productivity can lead to high level of employment in agriculture, especially in agriculture, where we need to absorb a large share of the labor, and so this to me means that we require for very an enabling policy framework for private investment by farmers themselves. Let's not forget that farmers are the bigger investors in agriculture, and that governments, donors, and foreign corporations only come after in terms of share. We have shown that in FAO, and we believe that this is what can really help transformation. And that is very much related to the point on science and innovation, I think also that Yemi referred to. Yeah, one point that is only remember, John Meller referring to that is this idea that if you want to create a very important, very effective employment market, at the same time there is probably a need to look at ways to accompany that with a very dynamic domestic food market. To actually make sure that we want to avoid raising food prices, and therefore this is again linked to the issue of productivity and the resulting income increase. On the point that is another one made by David, my question would be to, and it's also related a bit to what Mark was saying, is the changing in diets linked to the urbanization process likely to be a factor of domestic food market growth, or is it something that will probably result in additional international trade and therefore massive imports? We know that for the time being, agricultural exports typically benefit peri-urban agriculture and not very much the remote rural areas where the poor live. So could we find policies to curb that? Point 4, and it's the last one, is increase employment in agriculture. Well, ultimately, African countries need to better exploit market forces, and so therefore, commercial agriculture is probably one of the way to go. But market cannot do it alone, so we need supportive policies and good governance. We have, through our own work with MAFA policy monitoring that we have done in a number of countries in Africa, we still see that a number of policies are constraining market participation by farmers. Farmers are still receiving significant price disincentives as a result of poorly designed policies. The main driver of farmers' disincentive is not only the explicit policies, it's also the issue of the market structure, the issue of investment in infrastructure that would bring the cost of production, the cost of trade down to make sure that farmers can really participate. And so therefore the patterns in public expenditure really matter. Where are we spending our money? On what? Public good, private goods. This is clear. We know that for the time being, government tend to allocate their money primarily to private goods for obvious political reasons, and donors tend to compensate with money being allocated to public goods. This needs to change for long term. So this is basically a call for more policy reforms.
Thank you very much, Jean, for drawing attention to the multidimensional aspects of the challenge of increasing remunerative employment in Africa and the roles of science and private and public investment, as well as good governance, and for throwing out some policy challenges right at the end there for CAADP policymakers.